Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How are we all doing today? Anybody still hungover from last night? Everybody ready to party tonight? How many people are going to the red party? How many people are going to the Metalogics party? Okay, how many are going both? That's the group I like. Good. So we're on day 2, and we've got a lot of good news this week already, and we're going to go through some information about SharePoint 2013 and Azure and IaaS. If there's any questions, Neil's in the room, so he'll be answering the questions for you. I told you I was going to call you out. No, so we're going to, first thing I want to do is, because you guys have been sitting around for 2 days, so I'm going to ask you to all stand for a second. Let's all stand and stretch a little bit. Now, once you've stood up, every other person, so if you're starting on the right, just, every other person go like this, and then the other person go like this. So just kind of figure out the best as you can, okay? Yeah, however you want to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a selfie, because I told my mom I could get a standing ovation. So thank you very much. I'm done. Yeah, actually, I stole that from I can't remember the gentleman's name, and I tried to find out before this afternoon, and I couldn't, but yeah, so he tried that once on a SharePoint Saturday. I was like, dude, I got to try that once. And so that was my first time. It was successful. I might do it again. I have another session on Wednesday, on Friday. So if you're going to attend that one, don't tell anybody if I ask them to stand up what we're doing. That's nearly impossible. Okay. At a SharePoint conference, or sorry, a technical conference, that's difficult. Okay, so that's cool. So we're going to go in here and we're going to talk about some cool stuff today. If I can get my clicker to work here. My name's Brian Alderman, if you guys probably knew that from the slide. I'm an MCT of 20 years as an MCT this year. MCSE for SharePoint, author for SharePoint 2010 book you can see towards the bottom. And I also have a book in here that I'm going to assign to someone before the end of the session for a SharePoint 2013 book. I'm not sure how I'm going to give it away yet. I'm looking for good questions, not stumping the speaker, but questions that might be helpful for others. Or sharing an experience that you've already had with Azure and SharePoint would be helpful as well. In addition to the book, I have tons of other things. I work for CBT Nuggets, so I'm going to give away some earbuds from CBT Nuggets. I've got some free training. I've got 2 passes for 2 months or 60 days of Microsoft training at CBT Nuggets. We're going to be giving that away. Microsoft just gave me some shirts to give away, so it's going to be, I don't know if anybody's following me. Yesterday I tweeted, so CBT Nuggets, they do watch, learn, and conquer. Yesterday I said watch, learn, and win, because we're going to win some stuff today as well. So CBT Nuggets does on-demand video training for SharePoint, anything in Microsoft, anything Cisco, PMP, CompTIA, VMware. It's like a buffet of technology or learning material, and it's under $100 a month, and you get a 7-day trial, so you may want to just check it out. For those of you that don't win our passes for today. You can follow me on Twitter at Brian Alderman, or CBT Nuggets is at CBT Nuggets. I don't tweet when I'm eating and when I'm going to the bathroom and stuff like that. It's usually about session information or where I might be or something like that, so you don't have to worry about that. I love to travel, so the beauty of what I get to do as a speaker is travel all around the world. I spoke at the Evolutions Conference in London 2 weeks ago. I happened to go through Dublin and spent some time in Paris, so it was a little bit of a vacation as well. And I love to play golf. But I didn't grow up in an area where I could. I grew up in Vermont. Does everybody know Vermont is a state? It's a serious question. I was actually in a cab in California, and I got in, I asked the guy asked me where I was from. I said Vermont. He asked me what state it is. It's in. And I'm like, it's its own state, so I've never heard of it. It's actually the 8th smallest state, so Rhode Island being the smallest. So it's not even the smallest one, and he didn't know what it was. So then I moved to Colorado Springs, and I ended up in Arizona. Now, when I lived in Vermont, I lived in a little town up in north near Montreal, the Canadian border. That's Mom, Dad, and me when I had hair. So how many people are kind of new to SharePoint? Oh, okay, a couple of you. So if you're new to SharePoint, I want you to take a selfie of what you have for hair now. Because this is what I had, and then SharePoint came into my life, and this is what I've got so far. And it's going fast. Or if you have a lot of hair, sorry, you got the, yeah. Or if you have a lot of here, just take a picture of it while it's, the color is supposed to be, because it's going to turn gray. So I love that picture, and I try to get that in here every time I speak. So again, I love golf. I play in Arizona because the cups are a little bit larger there. So if you really want to improve your game, just move to Arizona, because it's going to be much easier for you. I like the guy on the left. He's lining his putt up. I don't know how hammered he is to line that up, but he's not going to take any chances. He's actually going to line that putt up to make sure that he hits it. All right, and then the 19th, of course, that's the best hole in the course, of course. But all right, so what we're going to do, this is going to be probably one session, or the only session, that's going to build the SharePoint farm out while we're in here. We're going to build an entire farm out in Azure while we're sitting in here. So I'm going to begin with a demo on how to do that. And anybody sat any of my sessions anywhere around the world? So a few of you. So in all my sessions for the last 10 years, I've always said not to do a spousal installation. For those of you that are not familiar with a spousal installation is when you sit there and you hit set up and you go, okay, kind of like you do with your spouse, okay? I've never done one of those live. I'm going to do my first spousal installation today because we want to get this kicked off and going, and want to go back to it to see that it's actually built out the farm. After we get the demo started, or the build created, we're going to go in and we're going to talk about understanding SharePoint and IaaS. Then we're going to talk about creating a template. So the cool thing we can do is we can create a machine the way we want it and then store it in Azure. And it is Azure, not Azure. I just came from France, so I was saying Azure for a while, but now I figured out it's Azure. We're going to go and create a template, so it allows you to create multiple machines, virtual machines in your world, and with pre-customized or pre-configured software already, so you don't have to start from scratch. We're then going to go in, not there yet. We're then going to go in and we're going to talk about configuring Azure backup. So the cool thing we can do is we can set up either a SharePoint backup or any type of backup, and we can store it in your Azure environment. So we're going to walk through a demo on doing that and talk about the benefits of doing so. And then we'll look at actual SharePoint disaster recovery within Azure as well. So let's go ahead and build a farm as we sit here. So I'm going to come out of here and go into my environment. Now, anybody watch cooking shows? How many people watch cooking shows? You know, now they have all the ingredients already, and the oven's preheated and all that cool stuff, and all of a sudden they mix it all up, and then they have their cake or whatever is ready. Well, I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to walk through the steps on building a farm, but I already have a farm built the way it should be, because I'm going to do a spousal, which I recommend you don't do. So my farm already built is called CBT Nuggets. But let's just say that you just spun up, you just got your account for Azure, and you want to create a farm in less than an hour. So that's going to be our goal here. So we're going to go to the marketplace, and I'm just going to simply type in SharePoint to search for. And you're going to see we have a SharePoint server farm down here. So I'm going to click on that. Now, you could do this individually. You could actually go out and spin up a domain controller in a virtual machine. You could go out there and add your SQL servers. You could set up a redundancy with those, and then you could build your SharePoint farm. Or you could do this. So if your boss says, if you don't build me a farm in an hour, you're fired, this is going to be our way to get around that. So we're going to come in. We found our SharePoint farm template. We're going to go click Create. And after we click Create, it's going to ask us for some basic questions. So we got to give it a name. I'm going to start with trying to click in here and give it Ignite. I get to click in there. Oh, come on, you got to be nice to me already. There we go. All right, so I'm going to call this Ignite. And actually, in case, let's do Ignite CBT. And then we're going to use, I go by Balderman, by the way. Okay. So I'll answer pretty much most anything. And so we're going to Balderman. We're going to do this. What's Microsoft's top secret password we always use? Yeah, exactly. So, you want some earbuds? CBT Nuggets earbuds for her. So we're going to use our top secret password. Actually, I'm not going to use that because I've had other people and other speakers that will kind of mess with you, and they'll go in and change the password on you. So I'm going to use something slightly different, just so no one jumps in there during the session like, oh, I changed that. You missed. Okay, so we're going to go in, and hopefully those two passwords match. And that's a no. Does it turn pink? Oh, there we go. Oh, now we're going now. Let's try this again here. Let's go back here. Oh, man, I'm all over the board here. Let's go here. Try again. Okay, let's try again. Yes, exactly. Are they doing surveys? Oh, man, I'm hosed already. Let's go back in here again. Sorry about that. I clicked a tad too far. This is, unfortunately, I'm using the Surface Pro 3, and it's a little bit smaller text up here than I was hoping for. All right, let's find this again. Let's go to our farm. Click, create. Give it time to get to the resource group again. So again, we're going to set this up. And now, like I said, this takes about 50 minutes. So once we get this going, we're going to take about a 50-minute break and then come back and we'll just continue the demos in our new machine. But we're going to actually, let's go back to Balderman. I don't know what I did wrong. Now, this right here is the key checkbox right here. By clicking this, if you click this item right here, if I don't click it by default, so I'm spinning away from a little bit of a spousal installation. Without clicking that, you're going to get 3 machines. So I'm going to avoid, just because that takes a couple hours. So I'm going to deselect that. Now, the image that we're going to work with, or the demos that we're going to work on, I actually clicked that box, and I got 9 machines, because it set up redundancy for our SQL Server, for our web apps, and for our web front end. So that's a 6-machine difference, that one little click. And I don't know how much that comes down to in dollars, but you might want to figure that out before. Sorry? Oh, it's still yelling. Okay. It's only been, I've been using like for 10 years, so I don't know why. I'm going to try both. Yeah, I'm going to change them both. Are you kidding me? All right, let's try this again. I might have to use the default password. You guys just have to promise not to change it on me. I can see you logging in, and all right, I'm going to try this one more time. Who would have thought, password would have been my worst part of it. Yay. Okay, thank you. I didn't think I'd get that because I already got the standing ovation. But okay, so now we're going to just do for domain controller, we have configuration settings for that. So the host name prefix is Ignite CBT. Of course, it defaults to Contoso. We're going to change that to CBT Nuggets. And then this is where you need to dig in and figure out what tiers you want. So you can just actually get some ballpark ideas, and I'm just going to click on this, as to what options you want. Make sure you understand and read those, and make sure you're choosing the plan subscription that's going to be beneficial for you for what you're trying to create. So I'm just going to leave it at that, but I wanted to show you that. I was hoping it's going to take a little bit of time to load the prices. I actually spun up 3 images, went off to Europe for a couple of weeks, thought I shut them down and deallocated them. Anybody run into that yet? You can't just shut them down. You have to shut them down and deallocate them. If you don't do that, you're going to get an email saying you burnt all your money out, which is what I did when I was in Europe. I thought I had shut them down, and I didn't. So we got to make sure that we shut them down and we deallocate. So that's what I'm going to do for the domain controller. This is the SQL Server environment. Let me save that. Sorry. Thank you. So this is the SQL Server environment, and I'm going to go in, and it's going to say Ignite CBT, standard tier, again, walk through those. Now, we have the option here of using the administrator password. I'm going to do this for demo purposes only, but I don't want you doing that in real world, because the password I just typed in 15 times to get it right, they're going to use that for every service and every component of this installation, and we don't want to do that for security reasons. I'm just doing it to show you to expedite this demo. So we're going to go ahead and do an OK on that. So that's all I need for SQL. And then if you want to go down to the SharePoint server here, again, Ignite CBT, standard tier. I'm just taking all defaults again. This is my spousal install. I'm going to leave that, use the administrator password that I use for all the accounts. Don't do that in real world. And then we'll go ahead and do an OK on that. Now we're going to go down to optional configuration. And you can look at things like a virtual network. We're going to create one of those here. It's going to pick up the Ignite CBT. That's good. And if you look at storage account information, there's information about that. You can create a storage account over here. And then diagnostics, you can set them up as well. Let me flip a switch on that and do an OK. Oops, I think it went. And that's all I really need to do. I'm going to actually go and click Create now. And the platform, so as an MCT, I get an MSDN subscription to Azure, and I get $100 free a month. So for those either MCTs, you'll make sure you take advantage of that. So now you're going to see that in that working mode until it builds the farm out. We're going to let that go do its thing, and we're going to go back and we're going to talk about some other information now. So we're going to see that. We're going to come back to that in a little bit on here. So what we're going to do now is go in, as that's kicking off, Now, I did the old, click, click, click. A lot of us want to probably use PowerShell. So right here is a link that we have that you can automate a SharePoint installation using PowerShell. So I've set this up so it's in the slides, so you'll have access to it. And I'm going to jump out real quickly. It goes to GitHub, and it walks you through step by step on how to build a farm in Azure using PowerShell. Okay? Now, in addition to that PowerShell script, I've already opened this up. From inside of Azure, you can actually come over here and access this page here. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, it walks you through step by steps on how to create a backup environment as well. So there's several other PowerShell scripts out there that you can access for managing your SharePoint Azure environment, and you just have to access them, and you can access them right through the SharePoint or the Azure environment. So I just want to make sure that you knew that you don't have to, and we strongly suggest that you do use PowerShell. I'm just doing the install as quickly as possible because of time. So let's talk about understanding what SharePoint is and what's the difference between these different platforms here. So as you can see up here, it's not going to work down there, is it? As you can see up there, the left-hand side, the on-prem, we're responsible for everything here, okay? And as was that a beer? It's my fault. I should have asked you not to do that without warning me. Because I hear that, I instantly think it's a beer. So let me see if I can get back on track here. I'll just take a sip of water for now. Not quite the same, but okay. So over here, this is what we're working with over here. We've got this piece right here, where notice everything is blue is what we're managing, and then they're managing the rest. So right here, when we have the IaaS, which is what we're focusing on, we're managing the applications, the data, the runtime, the middleware, and the operating system. Now, back behind the scenes, Microsoft's cool enough to take care of this stuff for us. And if you compare that with this guy here, the platform as a service, there's only two components that we manage. If we're really lazy, we can come out here and use the software as a service. So it depends how much you want to work, quite honestly. There's more to it than that. But so anybody worked with any of these other platforms? How many people have actually installed SharePoint in Azure? Oh, quite a few. Good. Anybody have a good story to share first? Anybody? No, let's do that. They're all good. Anybody have a situation that occurred like that would be helpful to other people because you can win something? That would be helpful for other people that you may have encountered during your install. Yes. I'm sorry? Don't you need Active Directory? Yeah, when I went through that, when I built my farm, the first thing was a domain controller. That's taking care of AD for me.
Make sure you choose the right region. I created a lot of farms in Northern Europe.
So one of the options is what region do you want to build your farm in? He ended up building his up in Asia or somewhere like that. He said somewhere else. So make sure again, I did a very quick installation. Would you give this guy a shirt, Chris, or something, whatever he wants there? I did mine fairly quickly because I want that to be cooked before we get done. A couple other comments over here.
Be prepared to increase resources.
What kind of resources? Be prepared to increase resources. Memory and CPU.
And also use the temporary drives. So configure the temporary drives for anything that's temporary.
Yeah, so there's a temporary drive, which is a D drive. We're going to talk about that shortly. Make sure you use that. Don't store anything of any importance on there because it gets wiped quite frequently. So, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Thank you. So advantages of doing this. It's ready to use pay-as-you-go, a rapid deployment to a secure and scalable cloud environment. Now, as we're building just a 3-server farm. If I did that little checkbox, it's a 9-server farm. So we can use this as an option here. We can grow as we need to. We might want to start out, and we're going to look at topology shortly. We might want to start out with a smaller environment and grow as we need to. We can deploy custom Windows Server images using templates. We're going to talk about those a little bit more as well. We can have with both the business and licensing mobility, gives us a lot of flexibility there. We have hybrid connectivity. One of the cool things is I don't have to say, all right, I'm done with on-prem. I'm going to move everything to the cloud. I can decide to move components to the cloud, and I decide to move them back over to the on-premises world. I know I'm supposed to say on-premises. I'm too lazy, so I say on-prem. So on the on-prem world. So we have those options. Reduces IT overhead, so we get more time to go drinking. And then you can begin, if you haven't messed around with this yet, you can actually begin with a trial version and just explore with that trial version. Now, in addition to that, there's some considerations, and that's why I'd ask some questions, some experiences as far as be prepared. As easy as I just made it look, I mean, this is, like I said, it's just because of a time constraint. There are better ways to do this. You can spin them all up individually. You can set up high availability. Plan before you kick off this installation so you don't have to go out and redo. Figure out what function and features that you want. What kind of users are going to be accessing the content? What type of content are they going to be accessing? What type of permission strategy? What service apps are we going to need? Are we going to need search? Are we going to need managed metadata service for term stores? Figure all that out just as you would planning for an on-prem environment. Make sure you go through that process before you go in and kick off the installation. And one of the options as well, and again, this provides the scalability, is your topology. So we want to make sure that we provide that. Now, the first topology that you don't see here is a single server topology, because I don't want you to do that. So I didn't even put it up there. I was going to put a farm from Vermont up there, but I didn't have time to put that picture in. So that's a single server farm, which means SQL, SharePoint, and SharePoint AD are all running on the same machine. So we want to try to avoid that. Now, ones that are okay, starting with, is this two-tier farm where we can set up all our web apps and servers. It's going to be one machine, and then we have our database roles on another machine. All right, then we're starting to grow. We get more money from finance. When we get more money from finance, now we're up to 4 machines. We got a single server database server role, 1 application role, and 2 WFEs. Now, quite honestly, if it were me, fortunately there's only one of me, if I had the money came in right now, I've got 3, let's say I've got a web front-end server, I've got an application server, and I've got a SQL server. If it were me, I would probably take this guy here, that's a web server, and I would probably install a second database server instead, because it doesn't matter how many WFEs I have. If I have a single bottleneck SQL server that's toasted, I'm in deep doo-doo. Okay, so it's not going to matter. So I tend to lean towards duplicating or setting up high availability on the database side first, because you've got to have the content to get access to be able to access, in order to access it through the WFEs. But these are just different ways that we can roll this out. Now, another way is for us to is just duplicates, redundancy. I don't want you yet. So, anyways, another way is this guy here. Get out of me. All right, so this guy, now you'll let me write. So we'll go here. So 2 web servers, 2 application servers, and 2 database servers is a better option. And then we have just an enterprise-size environments where we have web server groups, we have app server groups, and we have database server groups. And we just customize that to see fit. And we can do all of this in Azure. So you just have to just kind of decide what your baseline topology is going to be, and then you can grow it from there. Okay, so when we're spinning up machines that's working behind us here, we've got a couple of recommendations. First off, of the plans, if you're going to have a medium-sized farm, you're going to look at the idea of using the plan of A6 or A7 as a recommendation. Your disk, you can only have 16 attached disks, 1 terabyte each, so you have to make sure you understand that those are some restrictions with that. We talked about, somebody mentioned the temporary drive. It's the local D drive. It's where your page file store, your temp files are stored on there. That gets pretty much flushed out every time we restart, so don't put anything of any importance on there because it gets pretty much wiped every time. And when it comes to caching, we're going to want to use that for improving performance. We have a couple options there. For your data disk, you want that off for read and write performance, and for your operating systems, you want that on for the caching component or functionality. So, and then we're going to manage it using either RDP or remote PowerShell for that. There are PowerShell commands specifically for managing your Azure environment, your SharePoint and Azure environment. It also requires a virtual network. So we have cross-premises where we have, again, we could have it on-prem as well as in the cloud, in the Azure world, or we can have a cloud-only environment. We have to be concerned about our domain controllers, where those are located, our DNS servers. Affinity groups are replaced now. We now have Azure regions. So if you're in an environment already, and several of you already raised your hands, if you use affinity groups, they're going to be migrated to regions instead, or Azure regions. So if you see something different, that's what they're doing for us. We don't create affinity groups anymore, and that was just as of, I think it was just a couple weeks ago. And then we have to be concerned about our firewalls or endpoints for security of our information and accessing information. So what if I'm going to spin up a farm and I need 12 different servers, but I need custom information. I need certain applications already out there installed for me, and I don't want to go in and have to spin up the farm or each machine individually. I could write a PowerShell script for it, but then I need to go and install custom software that we use inside our company on each machine. Well, instead of doing that, we can go back, and what we're really using is a flavor of sysprep. We're going to create an image that we're going to use, and we're going to use that we're going to use that template to create multiple servers that we want. That's going to include that custom software and the customizations that we've created. So we're going to create a template. Now, the advantage of this, we just talked about, quick deployment, multiple SharePoint servers. Once you create one of those images, you're going to have, there's an area inside of Azure called My Images. You're going to be able to access it from inside there and duplicate it to create additional servers. You're going to preload any custom settings, any custom software that you want installed on this farm. And then you're going to set up, and what it's not going to do is set up domain-specific information. That's how you're able to reuse that, because there's certain items, bless you, there's certain items that are out there that aren't stored in there, so you're able to reuse that for additional machines. Some things to be aware of. If you're going to use this machine and install SharePoint on it, you want to stop the installation or don't complete the installation with the SharePoint Products and Technologies Configuration Wizard. So we want to make sure that we don't do that. You have to install the SharePoint on the operating system drive. That's going to be one of the requirements that you do that, because it doesn't capture data drives. The network configuration settings aren't going to be included. And there's an option when you're going through the build of these, and it's to generalize, and that's what you want to make sure you click that checkbox so it doesn't store some of the system-specific settings. So when you go out to clone or create new servers with that template that you've created, they're not going to have those system-specific settings. So these are some advantages and some cautions that we want to be aware of. Now, it's pretty straightforward to create one. Now, like I said, I've got 9 images already out there, virtual images, excuse me. VMs already out there on the farm that I already created for us. The one we're creating now is going to be 3 virtual machines. But if I wanted to create an image template, I would first go in and create a new VMware image, or VM image. I didn't say VMware. Cancel that. Edit that out, please. Thanks very much. Create new VM based on a Windows Server 2012 R2 data center. After you do that, you'll establish a connection to that new server. After you've done that, you're going to go to the new server and you're going to download the SharePoint installation bits. Once you've done that, you're going to run the install, but you're going to stop at the product and technologies configuration wizard. We don't want to complete that piece of it. You'll go on and install and configure any of the custom software or any customizations you want to add to this server, which will be applied to all future servers that you create from this image. And then you'll go in and run sysprep, and you'll shut down the VM. After you've done that, from the Azure portal, you're going to locate under My Images that new server that you just created. And then you'll go out and you'll start creating your new images with that template. So it's very, very straightforward to do this. I think the most difficult piece is going to be getting those customizations on there that you're going to, it's going to be decided by the company as to what customizations that need to be on every future image that we create.
Is there a difference in licensing model whether you use one of their templates?
Is there differences in the licensing model? There is a difference. I'm not familiar with the terms of those differences, but be careful about the licensing model when you're using their server, their templates versus your templates, because there is some issues that you need, or not issues, but some differences between those. Now, the other thing we can do is we can configure Azure Backup for disaster recovery. So the cool thing about this is that not only are we going to have our SharePoint farm out there, we're also going to set this up so we can go out and configure, whether it be SharePoint information or file servers, we can set up Azure as our remote backup environment. So we don't have to worry about a ton of backups locally. So when I hear backups, I always have a question for people. Whether it be, like I said, 87% of all information that you store in SharePoint is stored in the SQL Server. But remember, that 74.8% of all statistics are made up on the spot. So be careful about that 87% piece. But the idea of backing up, so when you back up information, let's talk about SharePoint. We've got a farm, we want to back up our databases, we've talked to our SQL Server, our DBA, and we've had lunch with them. So my recommendation is to take your DBAs to lunch once a month and make sure you understand what they're doing, because it's July 4th, you're planning on upgrading from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013. Well, you just find out the senior DBA is going to be in Hawaii that week. You're really sure you want to try to pull out that upgrade while your senior DBA is out. And by the way, I'm a DBA as well, so you could buy me lunch once a month, which is pretty cool. I mean, so how many people are the DBA and the SharePoint admin? Okay, so take your company credit card and take yourself out to lunch. Okay, it's really cool if you sit the opposite side. Have a conversation. Sit over here as a DBA, then sit around, then go over and sit around as a SharePoint admin, and talk to. You know, waitresses love that stuff. Definitely. Don't order any tequila because you're not going to get it, but you do have options for doing that. So, location. One of the things I'm always concerned about is people do SQL Server backups, and the server room's over there, and their backup room is over here. And it's in the same building, potentially even in the same room. Anybody see any risks in that? So I've got my SQL Server right here. It's hosting all my SharePoint content, and my backup's right here. Well, let's say it's even in the same room to start with. We'll start with a real bad situation. How many sprinkler heads are in this room? A lot. All right? So if something happens and the sprinkler heads go off, we've lost not only our SQL Server, but also our backups. So we got to think about where we are. So the Midwest, I just call Tornado Valley. Tornado Valley. So anywhere. So if you're doing backups in that area, you got to think about having a remote copy somewhere. Supposedly California is going to fall in the ocean, so you don't want to put anything over there. All right. You have hurricanes going up the east coast, so you don't really want to put everything in there. That's why I live in Arizona. We don't have any of that stuff. I think somebody said we got hail last night though, so I don't know. But besides that, so location of backups is very important. Have a local copy for quick recovery, and then have a remote copy. And Azure Backup gives you that remote copy option. And you can actually choose, and we're going to see this when we go in there, you can actually choose where you want that remote copy. It can be over in Asia or Europe if you want that remote copy that far away. I don't know about those Brits, though, so be careful with those guys. But is Steve Smith in here? Don't tell him I said that. I'll never get invited back. But so we're going to look at this here. Now, to do this, it's pretty easy to set this up. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the steps necessary to create backups inside of Azure. And you're going to see how easy it is to do so. We're going to create a backup vault. After doing that, we're going to go in and we're going to download the vault credentials that are generated when I created that backup vault. We're going to then download and install the backup agent on your on-prem world. And after that, we're going to go in and we're going to just configure the backup as to what backups we want, what do we want to back up, and how often do we want that backup to occur. So those are the 4 easy steps to go ahead and configure an Azure backup. Let's see if they're really that easy, though. I'm going to discard my wonderful writing. Anybody get a picture of that? Because you might want to save that because it's going to go away. Just kidding. My handwriting stinks. So, okay, so let's go in here. And you'll see our farm still being built. So my hope is to have that to say, what do I call it, CBT Ignite by the time we leave here. That means the farm's there, and we're going to go out. We're going to test that. But if not, then we're going to go in and use the one that's already out there. So my hope is that this is going to complete, and when doing so, I'll go show you the machines that are out there. But let's go ahead and take a look at the one that I created already. And this guy is the one that has I did that checkbox for high availability. So this has 9 machines versus the 3 that we're building behind the scenes now. Now I tested this. For the 3 machines, it took me about an hour when I was in Phoenix, just under an hour. This took about 2 hours and 5 minutes to build these 9 machines out when you chose the high availability. So we're in here, and we want to go in. We're going to do first. Let me show you a couple things. Let's go into... actually, I'm going to come back so you know where I'm coming from. Let's go back home here. And now I'm going to click the Azure portal. I like that little spinning thing. I got to find, anybody know where the animated GIF is for that? Remember that one back in, was it SharePoint 2007? We had that green thing that was the animated GIF. I replaced that with Caddyshack, the dancing golfer. I found what the file was. You could place it with any animated one. Of course, I was told some students that in a class once. Of course, a couple of them having to take it to an inappropriate level. But they took a couple animated GIFs in there that shouldn't have been in there. But anyways, so we can come in here, and if we come down a little bit here, we're going to see that over here we have our, what am I looking for here? Did I go by it? Right there, recovery services. So this is where we come in, create a new vault. And this is, again, this is pretty straightforward, recovery services. We want a backup vault, so we click on this guy here. Quick create, we have to give it a name, so we're going to call this CBT Ignite. And then this is where you choose where you want these backups. No matter what you back up, this is where you choose where you want those backups stored. So one of the concerns I've always had over the, I've been, like I said, teaching for 10, 15 years, especially database product stuff, is the location of backups. A lot of people think, oh yeah, I got a backup in a file share that's in the next room. Well, again, depending on where you are, that's not sufficient enough. It's good to have one local for a quick recovery, but it's also good to have one in a third location, and now you can choose where you want it. Here we can go to East US, Japan, East, West, North Europe, West. So we have options here. Let's throw this one over into, I'll get some brownie points back. We'll throw this in North Europe, and then we're going to go ahead and create the vault. And it's going to go ahead and create this vault called CBT Ignite. It's giving me some more information down here. I'm going to say don't show them this again. And that'll go away. So it's going to create this vault called CBT Ignite. It says it's creating, so it's not quite ready yet. You can see it spinning right there. And then after it creates that, looks like we're still going. After it creates that, we're going to take the next steps. We're going to create the vault credentials and download those. And after we do that, we're going to show you how to use that agent on your desktop, on your servers, to back up into the Azure world. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on this guy here. Oh, I don't want to delete you. Thank you, though. That's not what I'm looking for, actually. Services. This little arrow. Yeah, right, that's the guy we want to click. Okay. So after we do that, now we can, so the second step was to download the vault credentials. So we're going to go ahead and click that guy here. And we're going to go ahead, it's going to generate the vault credentials. We'll do an OK on that. You'll see that it downloaded that. I don't remember where my downloads go. Oh, sorry, so I know where they are. That's cool. And then after that, we're going to go for Windows Server or System Center. We're going to download the agent onto your server side. So we'll just click that, and you'll notice that was downloaded. So then we're going to kick off the agent installer that we just downloaded. And we're going to say yes to that, baby. It's kicking off the installer for me. And now it's installing this agent for us. Boy, the text on this is very small for me. You guys can see it better than I can, actually. I'm sorry? Would you want that installed on your servers instead of the client here? Yeah, no, the agent you want installed, yeah, it would be local servers you would install that. My client just happens to be my Windows 8.1. But I would be doing this piece. I would download this piece to my server environment. That's correct. Okay, so let's see where'd it go here. Oh, man, I lost it. Okay, so it was running. I did this guy. Should have asked me a couple more questions. What am I doing right here? All right, installing it. Where's my wizard? That's what I'm waiting for. Any questions while we're watching this green progress bar? Yes?
You know if they're going to have the North Central region?
What is it?
North Central region?
Do we know if we're going to have the North Central region soon? Anybody know if that region's popping up soon? Neil? I was trying not to look at you. Okay, it was actually mentioned in session this morning. For the Azure's yes. You can back up anything you want to it. I'm sorry? It's a Grand Uber backup, if that's what you said. That's good. Oh, I thought you said Grand Uber. That sounds good, too. But yes, it is. I think it's like, yeah, it's the best thing they ever came up with. Well, except for Windows 10, but. Yeah, Grand Uber and Grand Uber. I have not been drinking today, I promise. But it's early. Bless you. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I was doing this deal here. Kick that off. I don't know where my agent went. There's supposed to be a little wizard deal supposed to happen here. I lost that. Just the internet, because you're going to use RDP to go in and connect to it. Now, I don't know what happened here. So this was download, and I ran it.
Hey, Brian, you have a shortcut on your desktop.
Oh, look at that guy. Hit it right there on me. Okay, thank you. So what we're going to do now is that the first thing that we downloaded was that the credentials. So we're going to actually it's easy enough just to browse to those and then go to the downloads. Hopefully I don't have too many on this machine. My guess is I do. Not too bad. Okay. And then, by the way, happy Cinco de Mayo Day. That means tequila tonight for you guys. Not for me, but for the rest of you. So we're going to go ahead and install this now, this vault on this agent. Give it a passphrase. And when we're going to save the passphrase, we're just going to browse this guy out. And we got to make sure we don't lose this guy here. We'll put it in there for now. Then we'll go ahead and click Finish. Whoops, let's grab that. What is it? Oh, that's right, too. 12 to 16. All right, so what did I do the other day? I did, oh, I know. What was that one?
Beer.
You got it. That's 3. I need more. I need a 4th beer. There we go. You guys are trying to get me drunk already. Okay. There we go. Now I've got 4 beers, and it's not even 4 o'clock yet. Yeah, because I typed it twice. You're right. So. All right, let's check. So what it's doing now is trying to go out and establish a connection between my server environment and the Azure environment with what we've just used for credentials and everything and set up. Now it's available and ready to go. And this is the interface I would use to actually come in here now. And inside of here is where I can come in and set up backup. So I've got jobs and alerts. Over here on the right-hand side, I could register a server. You need to register a server for the backup process to take place. So we'll just go ahead and click Next on that. And, we're going to do this actually, sorry. That piece we already did through the wizard. So now we'll go in and schedule a backup. And while that's opening here, let's go back into Azure for a sec. And we'll go into here, and we'll go into our recovery services. I'm having such a hard time to see this coloring here. Right there. You have no vaults. Well, we know that's not true. Come on, you can do this. Well, let me check my email.
Yeah, with 8 beers.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Let's close this one out so I have another one open. Come on, you can do this. Go, go, go. So you guys saw that I created a vault. That's why I'm trying to just get it refreshed so I can go show you. And then now we come in here now, it should show that, I think this is called CBT Trainer Surface. It should show that this machine is registered inside of the Azure world. Well, let's check on our farm. That's still building. How are we doing for time? Got a half hour, so it's been 45 minutes. So we should be close to having that one cooked here. Come on, reload for me. I'm hardwired in, so as far as I know, I do. Glad you said that. I just noticed I didn't plug in my laptop. This does a lot of good down here, doesn't it, huh? All right, let's see here. I'm gonna bag this guy here. Let's go back to here. Go back to Azure Portal. And we'll find our recovery services again here. In a sec, it'll build them out. Let's see here. Did that already. Let's go back here. Well, I don't know where that dude disappeared to. Click this. Skip this guy. We don't care about that. Dashboard, that's what I'm looking for there. And you'll see that we have one server registered. Click here. And you'll see that we have an Azure virtual machine. Let's go to Windows Server. And here's my trainer's surface. So this is inside of Azure. It sees this machine. Again, I'm using a Surface Pro 3, so you would do this on your servers, your actual servers, SQL servers, SharePoint servers. You can use this for anything, any type of backup at all. Okay, so that's how we would do that backup. And so then I would just go back to the agent on the desktop and decide in here what I want to back up. So I'm not going to walk you through that because that's just a standard scheduling a backup, and we don't need to walk through those steps specifically. So the other thing we would do inside of Azure, we would talk about those templates. Let me go back a screen. And here, let's go back here, actually. And browse everything. And down here, this is the VM images. I was saying there's my images. These are VM images. We click on those. This is where I would go in and store an image that I wanted to use as a template. So, and to do that, I would just actually go to my virtual machines. And I would, let's say I want to dupe the web one. Let's say it's been, remember, we've gone through those steps to add the custom software. We haven't run the technology wizard, product technology wizard. So we want to work with this one. We come out here, and the idea, what we would use is the capture option. Now, it's going to bark at me because it's a running machine. It doesn't like that. So that's why I said when we were working up those steps to make sure you stop the image, because it's going to yell at you right here and say, yeah, you can't capture this one now because it's in use. And so we would just take a capture of it, and that's going to create that snapshot of that image, and then we would use that to create additional servers as we went through the, as we built out our farm. Okay, so that's those guys. Let's jump back out the slides here. Let me just check on the farm real quick while I'm actually in here. She's still working. Come on, don't let me down, man. Okay, so that's still cooking. Let's go back into here. I think we saw this already. We'll just cruise through that. So that's what those steps that we just went through. The step 4, like I said, the only thing we didn't do was actually set up a backup job, but that's what we would have done with the wizard. And that's the demo we just did for the backup for that piece. Now let's talk about SharePoint disaster recovery with Microsoft Azure. And at the end of this section, if that farm is not cooked yet, then what we're going to do is just connect to this farm and just show you what we can do inside of there. I was hoping to connect to that first one or the new one that we're building. But so SharePoint disaster recovery, as you can see here, and it's really a 7-step process that we have up here. You first, and we talked about this earlier, when you're going to set up even your SharePoint farm, is that plan process. So do some design for the disaster recovery as to what's going to be involved. I mean, are we talking just SharePoint? Are we talking with, the SQL Server databases? Are we talking some content that we have in our world? What is it that we want to use? And then we have to create or establish a connection, a VPN, to that world, so we can actually perform the backups for the disaster recovery. Deploy your Active Directory and DNS world into the virtual network in Azure will be our 3rd step. Then we'll go into deploying the recovery farm to Azure. And then our 5th step is to use the DFSR between the farms, the file service replication process we're going to use between the 2 farms. Then, if you're familiar with SQL Server, you know there's a process called log shipping. That's how the two farms are going to stay synchronized. We're going to sync logs from the production farm, if it's on the prem world, and over to the Azure world. And then we're going to validate the failover and recovery. So, as you can see, I mentioned DFSR and DNS and Active Directory. If you're going to walk through this process, you need to be familiar with these topics here: distributed file system replication, Windows Server failover clustering with SQL Server, the always-on functionality that's available in SQL Server, the backup, how to perform backup and restores in SQL Server databases. And I mentioned earlier about taking your DBA to lunch once a month. Again, the two teams have to work very well together, as they do in Microsoft, to make these two products optimized. So you need to do the same on site as well. And then the SharePoint Server 2013 installation, you need to know how to build out a SharePoint farm, and then be familiar with what's going on with Microsoft Azure. And I know there's a session here just prior to mine about an introduction to the Azure world. So that's how we would build this piece out for us. Now, there's a couple different types of standby. There's a warm standby here, and it's really using a four-tier approach. And notice on the left-hand side, we've got our on-prem world, and on the right-hand side, disaster recovery, our backup, or recovery piece is in the Azure world. And those machines are spun up and are ready for immediate work or immediate use. And so the four tiers we have are the front-end servers, our web front-end servers, and any of the, if we happen to have the search query on there, the query component. Distributed cache is our tier 2. And the tier 3, we have our back-end services, our service apps, and anything that we're doing there. And then we have our databases. And this is the process down here. We have our file share here and a file share there. And those guys are keeping synchronized using those two dudes right there. And then the log shipping is being sent over to here. And then they're being read from this file share. And then they're being replayed or the updates. So what happens is the databases, we make changes in a database locally on-prem over here. When we do that, we have log shipping set up, we'll say every 60 minutes. Any transactions in the last 60 minutes are shipped over to our Azure world, and then are applied over there. So in this environment here, those things, if the 60 minutes is your log shipping time, those things are 60 minutes apart. It could be sooner than that. I think you're not supposed to go any less than 15 minutes, but you can monitor that to see how that goes for you. So that's how we would set that up in a standby configuration for warm. In the cold environment, the VMs aren't running over there. So that's going to save you some money, but now you have to consider the downtime that's going to be involved with getting things configured so that way you can take the content that you have in the on-prem world and get that information into Azure. So more downtime, but a little bit cheaper. So you have to look at what your service level agreements or SLAs are to figure out which approach do you want to use. Okay, so that's the review. So we'll come back to that in a second. I don't want to save my changes. We're going to go hope and see our farm is built. Let's see if that's happened. No, not yet. All right, so let's go ahead and connect to this for now. So I'm going to go into CBT Nuggets. We'll pretend it's the one that was built. We'll go to our virtual machines. And I'm just going to say I want to connect to a web app. So I'm going to go into Web 1, and I'm going to click Connect up here. And it's going to create, quickly, I don't know if you saw it, downloaded an RDP connection right here. So I'm going to double click on that and click on Connect. It's going to ask me for my password. Hopefully I remember this one. And then we're going to establish a connection to our Azure environment with, this is going to be, unfortunately, this is going to be right now, the 9 servers that we had, the CBT Nuggets farm. So we're now establishing a connection to the Azure environment with SharePoint running. And once it refreshes here, we're going to see that we have 3 icons that are automatically populated on our desktop in here. And one of them is going to be Central Admin. And we're also going to be able to, which we're going to go into first, actually. Let's just go in there first. This is the piece I was hoping to be able to do on the new farm that we're building. Any questions while this is getting ready to go? Yes, sir.
I have kind of a
So the question is, what's the advantage of doing this in Azure versus on-prem? It's with SharePoint specifically. Anybody want to answer that? What are some ideas that you guys have?
Development test environments that you may not want to spend money on your hardware. You can spin them up, shut them down, and you can test them, throw them away.
Yeah, exactly. Susan? Okay, cool. Scalable, because I can just build as I need to. I don't have to worry. Oh yeah, we're ready to increase, improve, increase. We're growing, or we merge with somebody like that. So now we need to go out and buy another server and all that. It's just, as you can see, it's very quick to spin these up. Were there any other questions or comments about that piece? Yes, sir. Okay. I'm sorry. Where would you Office web apps would go on the app server? That would be second tier. Neil, is that would be a recommendation or? Oh, that's right too. There's a licensing issue with Office web apps. Okay, so Neil will be glad to address that with you. Yes, sir, in the back.
How about this versus Azure Site Recovery? This is kind of you're doing all the hard work for your sales environment and sync the data over versus Azure Site Recovery with VMs and this migration to cloud.
Go ahead, Neil. What do we have left for giveaways, dude? Shirts? A couple good questions back there. We got some beanies or hats or whatever you call them around here. Yes, sir.
None of us really talked about the differences between Azure Public versus Azure Private or Azure Gov, I should say, because there are some big differences. You kind of went over the assumptions that everything we're doing is open and we can put it wherever we want. But when we get to the public, the Gov stuff, it really changes how we do it and where we do it.
Yeah, so under IaaS, you have some options within there. And when I'm talking about the planning process for the deployment, you have like a public cloud, or I guess a public rollout of it, and there's a private rollout of it. So you have to decide what it is that you're looking for, and look at the benefits or what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and whether or not you want to use the public or the private. The private's a little bit more expensive, but it's also a little bit more confined. So that's another one of the planning options.
So for the storage for my farm, probably I should use local redundant storage, not geographically redundant, right? For SharePoint doesn't like geographically.
So you should probably use, so the question is, for storage for my SharePoint farm, you should probably use local storage or local storage for your data for the farm versus remote.
No. When you set up the farm, there's a lot of storage where you put your VHDs and all that stuff.
Okay, where the VHDs are stored.
Yeah. So you don't use like geographically redundant storage, right? You use just local storage.
Correct. You want to give this guy a beanie or a hat or something? So we're logged in here. We've got our SharePoint Central Admin. We have PowerShell here. And we have this guy here for the products configuration wizard. Because remember, most often we're not going to run that, especially if we're going to create a template. So we're going to go into Central Admin. Should have spun that up earlier, sorry. So we're going to go into Central Admin. You're going to see that we manage this just like we would manage a farm on-prem. We can do anything that we want to, build web apps out here, service apps, build out our service app farm. So this builds the farm. So again, this one that the CBT nuggets that we're in now, I went through the same exact wizard or steps that I'm using where it's running behind the scenes right now. The only thing I did differently, the only thing I did at all differently was that checkbox for high availability. So if we were able to get into this farm, which, we've got a few 10 minutes yet, so we would be able to connect to it as we are here, and we've got our farm built in less than an hour, and we're able to start creating, start creating web apps and service applications, and now we build our farm as if we were on-prem. So the steps would be all the same at that point. Yes, sir.
When you build from an image like that, are they fully updated with Microsoft patches?
So now, which piece of it? You say they.
Well, like you said, SharePoint Farm, that template fully patched when you
So the pieces, when we walked through that diagram, they had the pieces that were supported by us versus them. So they're responsible for it. Windows Server 2012, they're taking care of that piece for us. We're responsible for the application piece. Okay, so, yeah, sorry, I didn't have time to install Edge. I wanted to. So here's our SharePoint farm. And like I said, it's just as if we have the on-prem world. Now, if this had been running for a while and we have issues, what would be different on this page? There'd be like a yellow bar or a pink bar across the top identifying those issues. Now, I think SharePoint farm admins complicate things, okay? And this is why, because let's just say that was there. There's the option down here, and it says view these issues. But if you went down to review problems and solutions, hoping this will be a little bit faster than that, but. So we'd have that pink bar or that yellow bar would say, hey, you've got a couple issues you need to be concerned about or we need to address. And you would click view this list of items, or you can click this item right here, which normally is just a little bit faster than this. And what it's going to do, it's going to list out all those issues that we have with the farm. And it's our job as farm admins to resolve those issues. And to me, if you're OCD like myself, you don't want that bar up there. You're not going to be able to sleep. So we want to make sure that we clean that up and resolve those problems. What's going on here? Try this one more time. Actually, it was going to be kind of a joke, but I can't get there to even show you the joke. So what is this? So bottom line, let's talk through it. If I click that, what am I accessing? A list of problems. So those list of problems, what's the best way to clean those up? All you do is you go into the list, you click that checkbox on the top that highlights all those items, right? And what do you do next? You click delete, and your farm's fine. You know? That's what I mean. I think we complicate things. There's easier ways to not fixing. So if you're going to have a meeting with your manager and you want to make sure that pink bar is not up there, that's how you fix that. I'd rather it's been better if I just been able to show you that. But anybody else have a question? Yes, sir. Two questions. No, it's only one at a time. I'm not familiar with that. Neil, can you adjust that? So the question was on load balancing within Azure. You can use the functionality or the features available inside of Azure for setting that up. Oh, here's our list. So we would have clicked on these items and then deleted it. Let's go ahead and go back. I want our farm to be completed. Oh, man, not quite there yet. All right, any other more questions? Yes, sir.
So you said that you recommended either A6 or A7 VMs
Correct.
for building this medium-sized farm. Could you quantify what you call a medium-sized farm?
Yeah. I would say, I don't know, out of 6 to 8 servers, I guess, was probably an area that I would start thinking about. Plus, and also another thing is the number of users. If you're running up to, over 100,000 users, it's another area you should look at. Okay.
If you only had 2,000, could you scale back from that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Well, like I said, now we're in central admin. We can do anything that we would normally do. And what you do is you would set it up so the on-prem world, you can keep that set up, your Active Directory on-prem, and have that synchronized with your Azure environment. So you don't have to worry about moving everything into Azure.
We've already set up a domain controller there in Azure anyway, so we're probably doing synchronization
Yeah. You can be giving stuff away. We're running out. You are? Okay. Just like throw stuff out? We got to figure out how to give away the book, too. Yes, sir. I give it to you? Okay.
Yeah, if you do it for production environment in Azure, would you set up then Active Directory read-only deployment in Azure?
So the question is, if you can set this up in Azure with a domain controller, would you set it up as a read-only in Azure? For the service account authentication and let the on-prem AD environment take care of the rest? As you're asking? Yeah, I think that would work that well. I don't know, read-only, though, is the only part that's catching me off a little bit off guard, though. Yeah, don't do this. All right, so I'm hearing a few people saying don't do this. Okay, good. Thank you. Oh, he's out handing stuff out now. Good.
We're having a content deployment farm on-prem so that all of your authors could be there, but all of your anonymous are in Azure, so that it's publishing from your on-prem deployment farm to your Azure anonymous farm.
So you've got I'm sorry, I'm going to try to repeat this so everybody can hear me. So you've got an on-prem content deployment farm, and then you've got your Azure farm, and what was that piece doing again?
It's anonymous.
Anonymous.
So all of your authors are local in your company. They're authoring on your deployment farm, local on-prem, but all of your internet-facing stuff is actually out in the cloud.
So everything, all the content deployment is being done on-prem. Your internet-facing site is in the Azure world. Yeah, that's good. You can just get them to synchronize. All right, we're going to do one last check on our farm. Still not quite there. You let me down. All right, so we've got some training certificates to give away and a signed book to give away. Yes, sir.
Is Azure considering leveraging SQL platform as a service in the future?
So is Azure, I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Is your Azure team considering leveraging SQL platform as a service instead of using infrastructure as a service for SQL storage?
No.
It doesn't do it today because of Windows authentication, but
And I recently talked to the guys at the NTC, and they said there is nothing currently on the roadmap for that because of the way that it works behind the scenes. And licensing.
There we go. Okay, so let's do this. I still have like 5 minutes. I'm going to hope that farm completes. Just so you guys know, you can do it in less than an hour, or about an hour now. Let's see. Let's do some questions for you guys. So you got the training certificates left, dude? And a beanie thingy. Who wants a beanie? Right there. Here's this gentleman right there. There you go. That was difficult. See how that was a tough question. Who's going to buy me a beer tonight? Just kidding. I'm just kidding about that. Susan, I know you will. For a training certificate, 2 months of all the Microsoft that you can eat, training that you can eat. What state is CBT Nuggets based out of? CBT Nuggets. Ooh, I'm surprised, you guys. I did not mention the state at all, by the way. I thought someone would know CBT Nuggets would do this. I was going to ask the city. I'm glad I didn't go there. Close to Washington. I'll help now. Oregon. He gets training. This gentleman is right here. Okay, so now, what's one thing that's really distracting for me? Opening a beer. Whoever said opening a beer? Thank you. All right, for the book, this is going to be a tougher one. Anybody have a question? Anybody have an experience with Azure and SharePoint 2013 that you want to share? That's like, hey, I did this. I did it. I didn't plan properly. I should have done this versus this. That would help everybody else in the audience. Yes, sir. Could you stand up so they can hear you as well? Because I want them to learn from it.
When you're deploying your virtual networks, if you're planning on like putting the farm into one subnet, you just want to make sure you give yourself enough IP addresses. It's not something you can go in and change easily. If you have like a site-to-site VPN connection, you have to like shut that down, change the config.
Okay, so when planning your farm deployment, make sure when you get to your virtual network, you allocate enough IP addresses so you don't run out. It's pretty much a summary of that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This gentleman's going to get the book for that. Any other questions? And I'll come up and I'll sign it for you before you leave. I have 4 minutes for this farm to complete. It's not looking good, is it? Yes, sir.
So if you want to increase the memory on an app server, for example,
$5,000. I'm just kidding.
nothing more?
Nothing more. It's all you need. And you write it out to Neil, and he'll double down for you. Just kidding. Thank you very much, everybody. See you again. See you at the Red Party.